Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Breaking Barriers with Trailblazing Women in Our Community. So, of course, we want to thank all of you for coming out to celebrate, recognize, and share incredible stories and achievements that women have been making for a long time and will continue to make. We want to obviously thank Bacardi and Clarien for this partnership, and this aligns with numerous initiatives for diversity that we both have throughout the year. And the last time that the stars have aligned like this was 1862. Did I get that date right? So if this is your first time coming to this incredible room, you can look up and see the stars that were aligned on February 4th, 1862. And so speaking of stars, we have 4 stars on this stage. And I'm going to introduce, starting from my right, we have Danielle Painter, who is the Director of Corporate Affairs here at Bacardi Limited. We have Mia Page Chambray, who is the co-owner of Cassine. We have Sophia Greaves, who is the Director, Head of Bermuda Insurance and Reinsurance Practice, and Conyers, Dill and Pyramid. And we have Laura Farge Lowe, who is the Managing Director of Island Trading Limited. So before we proceed, I'm going to address the elephant in the room. Where's the elephant? So originally when I was asked to do this, I in quick thought, I had reservations. I said, well, there's lots of incredible women in the community that could host a celebration of women event. But I've had since then lots of affirmations that, as a father and a husband, I have 3 girls. I'm a girl dad. And also Mia, I had a conversation with Mia and she said, you would really add some color, flavor to, the whole dynamic. So thank you very much. And also I want to say that in order to break barriers, it's not just women who have to kick down the doors and bust open the glass ceilings. It does take us men to be also lock and step on the front lines, right there with you to break every single barrier that exists. So if there's anyone who is getting in the way of that progress, that clap just now just lets you know that we're coming. So with the elephant out of the room, I pulled up a few, observations before we start the Q&A. And it's hard to believe in 2024, reading these types of statistics. 89.6% of women are employed versus 83.5% of men. So women make up the majority of workforce. However, according to Young Women's Trust Survey, half of women say that they have faced some sort of discrimination, and I would argue that that's still probably low. So, worryingly, over a third of HR decision makers confirmed that they were also aware of instances of women being discriminated. Almost a quarter, 23% of young women said that they were being paid less than their male peers, even for the same work, despite this being illegal. Almost 3 in 10 HR decision makers agreed that it is harder for women to progress in their organization than men. 15% agreed that men are better suited to senior management jobs than women, which means that 85% of women are actually better suited for the senior level jobs. Yet we see how that's played out. And 19% of HR professionals said that they would be reluctant to hire a woman who they thought might go on to start a family. So again, the importance of breaking barriers is why we're here today, not just to talk about it and to share experiences, but the actionable part of this is to actually go and continue to break barriers. So with that being said, our first question, which I'm going to start with Laura. Can you share a significant moment in your personal or professional journey where you felt empowered to navigate a particular challenge or obstacle? And what was the outcome, and how has it shaped who you are today?
Yes. I'm going to start with a recent example in the last 7 or 8 years, and it's a professional example. As an empowered woman, I made a decision, a business decision, to disenfranchise another empowered woman. And it was a hard decision to make because the fit was not right for our organization at the time. And I remember sitting down with that other amazing and empowered woman who I knew was not right for the organization and having a very frank conversation. And I remember her reaction of shock and surprise, which in turn made me shocked and surprised that she had not seen it coming. And for me, the realization that I had not managed that individual's expectations in the way that a leader should, and the way that made me feel disappointed by my leadership. And I think there was a part of that question which was, how have I changed as a leader? How have I done something different as a leader since? And I would say that I check in with my people more. I hold myself more accountable to be the person who is responsible for managing their expectations and where they should be in the organization. And it was an example that I never want to repeat again.
Danielle?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in and share a personal story of empowerment, slightly different than Laura, but it's definitely a story that has shaped, it's reflective of who I am and continues to shape me today. And it's actually a story from when I was a little girl, probably about 14 years old. I was at Work Academy at the time. And I was a big tennis player. I don't know if people remember that, but I was a top junior tennis player in Bermuda. It was my sport. And my grandfather was one of those quintessential, iconic Bermuda taxi drivers who had clients coming down from the East Coast all the time, elderly clients. And he would say, "You've got to play tennis with my granddaughter." So when Lantana was still around, if anybody remembers that, I remember playing tennis with this older woman from New Hampshire. She was fabulous. And she was like, "You know what? You'd be such a great candidate for this school that I attended in upstate New York called Emma Willard School, which is an all-girls boarding school." And you know, when you plant an idea in my head, it happens. But the problem was, I did not come from wealth. There was no way I was going to be able, my family was going to be able to afford to send me to Emma Willard School. So, you know, what did I have to do? I had to overcome this obstacle. I was going to make this happen. So as the empowered little girl that I was, I found out that the school was coming down to do one of those, you know, boarding school trips where they meet with students and stuff, but I didn't tell my mom. I went into my room and gathered all my report cards, my essays that I had written. I hopped on a bus, went down to Hamilton Princess, and took this meeting at about 14 years old. And they were like, this is great. I had all my documents, and they said, this is great, but we've got to speak to your mom. By the way, my mom's in the audience today. She probably remembers me calling her, and I feel like it was a payphone. That's my recollection when those were still around, saying, Mom, you've got to come to Hamilton Princess. I'm in this meeting. These people love me. And she was really upset at the time, and she came though, and she tells me later the first thing out of their mouth was, don't worry, she already told us you can't afford it. And she was like, all right, as long as you know that. But whatever conversation they had, they were impressed with me and my ingenuity and my perseverance, and worked out a way for me to attend this school. And it really is an example of where I felt bold, empowered, and confident to do that. And I took myself out of this element, this protective bubble of Bermuda, went off to New York on my own, and spent 3 years at this school. And it really has shaped me today. I'm a fiercely independent woman. I don't like to think that anything can hold me back, although lots of people have tried to hold me back. And there have been times when I've questioned whether I can do something. I suffer from imposter syndrome like a lot of people do. But I have to remind myself of those moments, that little girl who was not afraid to jump on a bus and make things happen for herself, and keep that inside of me as I encounter new challenges. So it really has shaped who I am today.
Wow.
Thanks,
Hi,
Mom.
And I had no idea you were on your way to Wimbledon. Learn something new every day. Sophia, how do you believe your experiences have influenced your leadership style and your approach to your professional careers?
So I'm going to draw on my experiences with other women and how they've informed my leadership style, because that really has been the sort of standout, most influential thing, I think, in terms of the way I lead. And I think the key thing has been knowing when to lead from the front and when to lead from behind, and striking that balance. I come from a line of extremely powerful, intelligent, graceful, thoughtful women. And my mother and her sisters, they're very strong, opinionated women. And my grandmother and my great-grandmother were very kind, gentle souls, but still leaders nonetheless. And so, the amalgam was sort of, at a very early age, I understood the beautiful complexities that make a female leader. And then my time at BHS, fast forward, I was there from primary all the way to high school. I learned about friendships, and female friendships in particular. And I find that women who know how to be good girlfriends tend to be good mentors, they tend to be good sponsors, and they tend to be excellent leaders, because the tenets of trust, loyalty, consistency, those are all the sort of same qualities that I think make a great leader. And then finally, fast forward to where I am now at Conyers, and I lead a team of 16, predominantly women. We have 7 partners, 5 of which are women, so it is absolutely a female-led team, the largest insurance practice among all private practice firms in Bermuda, which is female-led, and they are absolutely phenomenal. And I don't know everything, and we have our sort of, our own sort of separate areas of specialization, and in that, it's sort of knowing when to push them, when to stand behind them and when I need to lead them. And they've taught me that. And so I think it's really sort of, a culmination of all those experiences which have influenced me and my leadership style today.
Round of applause for you and your team. Wow. And Mia, you've got some of your team here.
I do.
As well.
I do have some of my team here today and my family. So thank you everyone for coming tonight, first of all. I'm usually not talking, I'm usually singing. So, which really leads into leadership style for me. I've been a lead singer of a rock band, both locally and internationally, for a long time, for many, many years. But I was used to leading men, which is pretty amazing. So it's always me in the front and a group of guys. But I think that really informed my leadership style because I was always the leader. I always made the musical cues. They had to follow me. And I think that really empowered me as a woman to really be out there in a very, very male-dominated, especially rock music is very, very, very male-dominated. But, I was out there standing alongside, these amazing men who really uplifted me and allowed me to go out and perform my craft and to do it in a lot of amazing places, from like festivals to small little terrible bars in Wales. So like I've done the whole gamut. But fast forward, as Sophia was saying, to opening up Cassine. And for those of you who haven't been there, it's a little shop on Reed Street. And it's really fun. And we started as an online business, and now we're at a brick and mortar. But the leadership style, I was actually talking to Sam, hi Sam, and I said, what is my leadership style? And she said, I think your leadership style is about empowering the team to really shine. And you kind of put an idea out there, and then you allow all of us to have our input. And that is really important to me. And I really find that also with all the women that walk into the shop, although we have created it and we're the leaders of the store, actually all of you amazing women who come into the store inform us about what we should be doing in the store, and it allows us to then continue to lead within the retail community, which is really exciting. And I find it so humbling and wonderful that I get to surround myself with these amazing artists as part of our team, and then also with all of you, our amazing Bermudian women community. So from rock and roll lead singer to now lead singer in the Cassine. But I really love it. It's fun. It's wonderful.
And if you've never been to Cassine, she said a little store. It's an incredible space. So make sure to check it out. And from every time that I've been in there, because it's right below Clarien, and you go in there and everybody's the vibe is just, everybody's happy. It's a real family in there. So great leadership style.
Definitely. And all women, all powered by women.
All women. Danielle. Did I say that too harsh? From your experiences, what are some effective strategies or actions women can take to break those barriers and glass ceilings in male-dominated industries or leadership positions that Mia kind of touched on just now?
Yeah, so I'll just talk about what my strategy is. And she is called Sasha. That's my strategy. I really do think that very often we'll find ourselves in challenging situations, maybe because they're unknown. But I always think to myself, who is the woman I am trying to be, and what would she do in this situation? How would she act? And I'm a huge fan of Amy Cuddy. He talks about fake it till you make it. If anybody knows her, she's a social psychologist. But she talks about how your body posture informs your brain and the feelings that you have. And she often talks about utilizing power poses as a strategy to feel confident in challenging situations. Even before today, I stood in that bathroom for a minute doing my Superwoman pose, which probably looks ridiculous to some people, but it really does standing in that position definitely, because it's usually the position you'll do if you're winning a race, you know, it really influences your emotions. But I often, like I said, I often think of this alter ego, and I think, what would she do right now? How would she act? How would she walk in this room? Would she walk in held high, or would she be making herself small? And instead of trying to think how I really feel, what Danielle's going through, I'm like, Sasha, where are you at? So that's what I do.
Any of you in the audience have alter egos?
Come on.
Is this a normal
In the
thing?
bedroom, no.
Yeah? It's a secret. Okay. Sophia, do you want to jump in as well on that? Oh, we're doing a mic swap.
Hello, is that better? Yeah, Daniel, what was the question?
So, effective strategies
Yeah.
and actions women can take to break barriers and glass ceilings in a male-dominated industry.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that I've harnessed over the years is really getting to know the people that I work with, getting to know what makes them tick, getting to know, as they say, beneath the iceberg, because if you know people, you know how to navigate them and their personalities. I also think it's really important, you know, to ensure that you seek male sponsorship. Mentorship is important. Having female sponsors is important, but male allies as well is important. So those are some of the things that I've sort of harnessed in my journey.
Very cool. So Mia, can you share some examples or instances where you or other women successfully challenge traditional norms or societal expectations? You seem like that type of spirit.
Oh, thank you. Well, I come by it historically. Another fun fact is actually for Women's Month in the back room where we're like uploading and doing all our stuff, we were looking up facts about Bermudian women when we got the right to vote, when credit cards were available to us, bank accounts, and we were like freaking out because it was like, in my mom's lifetime, in my grandmother's lifetime, I think one of our friends, Nicola Bromby, her grandmother was a suffragette. This is all within our own lifetime. And we were like, we're always having very hot debates in the back room, like, can you believe this? But historically, so my grandmother had the flower shop on Reed Street, and she ran it for upwards of 35 years. So every day I would go and I would get the women's shop, I'd get my little Orangina, and I'd go get my little crackers. And I'd go, and I'd walk from school and I'd go there. And unbeknownst to me, she was one of the only women, running her own business in Hamilton, which is unreal now when I think about it. When I think about actually how far women have come in our history, especially Bermudian women. We weren't allowed to have our own bank accounts without a husband. There was just credit cards, things like that. So I think about her running this business solo, and I find that, she owned it outright on her own without a male business partner in the 90s. And then she continued to run a very successful business. And now all roads in our family apparently lead back to Reed Street, because here we are back at Reed Street. So I also have my mom, she was the brains behind Cassine, and I was pregnant, and she said, "Hey, do you want to start a business?" And I was like, "Sure, why not? Let's do it." And my mom has been brave in her whole life. She raised us as a single parent, and I just found that to be so inspiring and really, really wonderful, and it allowed me to break barriers in regards to never being afraid. Because if my granny could do it and my mom can do it, then why the hell can't I do it? And so that's kind of our family history and how I kind of try to really walk the streets of Reed Street with my head held high and know that my ancestors have been doing it before me. And I hope that my family walks down those streets for many years to come.
You can make us all cry. That was beautiful.
But
the only store that was in the whole city, and now you're a store owner, continuing with that legacy.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow. So Laura, you're also
A retailer.
store owner.
Yeah, I love
Continuing a legacy.
continuing a legacy. I would say, you know, Sophia mentioned this, coming from a strong lineage of women, and how my grandmother, she was a milliner. She would make hats in, you know, the north of England, and she had a little shop. She lived above it with my mom and her brother and my granddad, and she started selling gloves, and she expanded her business really slowly. And even after her husband, my granddad, passed away, she kept running her store. And I guess it's in my blood because my mom had it in her. She was working in a corporate environment, and in 1980 had me, and in 1982 had my sister. And my dad's business went into protection, Chapter 11, in 1982. So she knew she had to do something. And so she bought a little bit of stock. And when I say stock, I mean the most unsexy type of stock. We're talking work clothes and safety items. And she put me and my sister in the back of her car. Neither of us were strapped in, because that's not what happened in the early 80s. And she went door to door to the hotels selling her safety items. So her safety gloves and her safety boots and safety vests, etc. And she took out a little bit of retail space at the top of Spurling Hill, where Sir John's structure is now. And it was a 10 by 10 room, and she sold her stock out of that room and started expanding her stock. And for me, remembering distinctly to this day this horrible living room carpet that we had when my parents bought this house they were so proud of, and it was the most humble house, and they still insist they got 2 mortgages, which I believe, but I'm not sure how they did that. And my sister and I would sit and fold the rain jackets in the early 80s that she would then sell. I mean, we'd only last about 10 minutes. You know, we'd be watching, you know, sort of chitty chitty bang bang, and then we'd sort of lose interest in the rain suits. But those very humble beginnings, and the realization that in 1983, I believe my dad had to be on the bank account in order for her to start her business. So she could not start a business. She could not have a business without effectively a man behind her. And also she was in a very male-dominated, undesirable, you know, it wasn't a nice, you know, boutique shop like Cassine, you know. And the realization for me and the learning for me is that it really, anything is possible. She did it out of necessity, yes. But she took action, and she showed us that very early on in a humble way. And the challenge, I think, for all of us as parents, you know, for many of us in the room, is to try to show your children and your grandchildren that same message. Because let's face it, our children are very fortunate nowadays, right? They have a lot handed to them. And I see a lot of nodding. And, you know, one of the things my mom did consistently, and I can see a young lady in this audience, my mom would always employ a Saturday worker, always, always. Not because we necessarily needed one, but because it was an opportunity for them to enter a family business and to see how it worked and to understand the mechanics of a family business. And that young individual in this room was one of the students that worked with my mom years and years ago. And some of them have gone on to be Rhodes Scholars. Others have gone on to be kind of less desirable. I think one's in prison at the moment. But the fact that you can give opportunities to up-and-coming people, I think, has taught me that is essential to continuing that legacy and that message.
Cheers to that.
Oh,
cheers. Yeah. That was amazing. Cheers to that.
And one of them works at Bacardi. When I met my wife, she was working on Saturdays at Island Trading.
I know, it's crazy, I know.
But it's just completely inspiring to hear all of these stories of how much we've transformed within not even a lifetime, because we're all still young. 1980 was a very good year, by the way.
I think 1980 was a good year for Yukon potatoes, apparently.
Yeah.
They always say that, but why else was it a good year?
I was born in 80.
Okay.
So I'm gonna move to Sophia, and I think all of you wanted to jump in on this next question, but I'll start with Sophia. Reflecting on your journey, what specific initiatives or changes do you believe are crucial? And we have HR heads here today, are crucial for organizations to implement to better support the advancement and empowerment of women in the workplace?
So it's a tough one. I spent some time thinking about it when we first discussed. And for me, and I can speak from the perspective of corporate culture, I think we need to move away from our approach to women as this homogenous whole over or at the expense of recognizing the individual. And our gender really is the sort of tip of who we are. There's so many other layers. I mentioned earlier, this idea of the beautiful complexities that make us whole. And, at the end of the day, when we all enter the sort of workforce, we're at different stages in our lives. We go through the workforce, we go through different phases, whether that be as mothers, whether that involves in maternity leave, marriage. We all have different priorities. Our backgrounds dictate our priorities. Whether we come from generational wealth or not dictates priorities. Our color, women of color have different priorities and hopes, dreams, similar, but they're different to white women, right? And so I just think it's important for us to acknowledge that individualism. And again, I sort of drawing on what I mentioned before, really sort of understanding the individual rather than treating women as this homogenous whole.
I'll just jump in because what was interesting to me when we were discussing this question is our different perspectives and that are influenced by our work experiences. And I feel super fortunate to work for Bacardi because I can compare it to previous experience working in other industries, namely banking industries or financial services outside of Bacardi. And I remember when I came here, this is a culture first environment, and it was really shocking to me the differences in terms of the focus on acknowledging that we want more women in leadership positions. We want to provide equal opportunities. We want to respect and recognize the experience of a woman is very different than necessarily the man, but we're not going to penalize anyone for that. And I really do give a credit to our HR team who is constantly looking external to us to understand what best practice looks like, what other organizations are doing. So when I think about what organizations can do, I would say continue to inform yourself and be proactive to understand what is best practice, what's happening outside of your little bubble, and what is important to women to retain that talent, because we are, as we've been talking about, we are the leaders, we are the ones that are delivering extreme value to upper management positions. You want to retain that talent, you need to, treat women and empower them and understand what you can do better through dialogue. So even as employees, not even in HR, ask more questions, inform yourself as well, and bring those learnings back to your HR team. And if those changes aren't being made, just know that there are companies like Bacardi that that you could potentially apply to. So that would be one piece of advice from me.
Yes, I think these guys said it perfectly. I mean, we don't have an HR team, but we do try to have like a running dialogue with each other as a group of women. And you know, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm a podcast junkie, and there's things that like I like to pick up. You know, just speaking with each other, having, you know, like I think you said Bacardi calls it a chat, like a
Let's talk.
Let's talk. Yeah, so let's talk. Let's have a tea. Let's have a coffee. Let's have a matcha. We drink a lot of those from Devil's Hour right around the corner. What can I say? And you know, we just really talk and try to inform, and you know, the team really teaches me a lot, as well as I try to impart to them as well, and take it all on board and create. We're still creating our culture. You know, we have a culture, but we're still a new business, so we're still creating and learning and adding things. It's kind of like a perfect recipe. You just keep adding things, and it just keeps getting better and better and better the more you taste it.
The only thing I would add is that knowledge sharing within the organization. So, for example, menopause, right? A big topic for many middle-aged women. Men need to understand it. They need to understand what women go through, so that a woman is not perceived as, you know, being grumpy or out of context. Because the more understanding we have, the more we can work together. You know, and I feel like that sharing, if you're an employer, I would encourage sessions to happen. And, you know, half the people will think, oh, that's not for me. I don't need to know about that. I'm only 25, you know. The more they know earlier on, the more powerful that is for all of you, because their mother could be going through it, right? Or their sister, right? And that's one of the things I felt I've not necessarily had through my strong women coming through, you know, the lineage is sort of having to seek that information myself. And so I feel very keen to share it with my people.
Thank you for all of those different perspectives. The next question, and this is a really important question, which was touched on earlier, but what role does mentorship and networking play in helping women overcome obstacles and shattering stereotypes in their professional journeys?
I think it's really important. But I refer to mentoring as the takeoff. What lands the deal is the sponsorship. We need people in rooms that we're not in to pound the table when it comes to salary, when it comes to promotion. We need women and men as allies to really ensure that beyond the mentorship, there's actual impact. And so, you know, a lot of emphasis does get placed on mentorship, but I certainly wouldn't be head of the insurance practice but for sponsors. So, you know, it's incredibly important as well.
I agree, and I think from a mentorship program, I mean, we have a lot of young ladies who come in right at their first job is in retail. Mine was. I worked for anybody work for Calypso when you were a teenager? Raise your hand. Yeah, okay. So from our perspective, you know, having these young ladies come in, we have a young lady who started with us when she was 15. She's 16 now. Sam started with us when she was 18. So we have like a lot. We've had some summer students who've come through, and we love to engage with businesses in the community who are doing mentorships, and we'll take, you know, mentees and really impart to them, but then again, them impart back to us. And it's part of the community, you know, a Bermudian community. I keep saying it over and over again, but we're all connected. I think you were saying that before. I mean, Alex working for Island Trading, you know, and now at Bacardi. So we're all connected as a community, and, you know, you come and you shop at Island Trading or Casino, or buy a drink from Bacardi, or get some, what do you get from your job?
Out of trouble.
Okay, trouble. Okay, out of trouble. You need to get out of trouble. There we go. Note to self. But, you know, you come in and we all support each other. And then, you know, your young, you know, your son or your daughter, you know, Kian, when your little girls get older, they want to come and have a job, and their first job is a lot of times in retail. So you come and you get a lot of life experience. You learn how to deal with customers. You learn how to run a till. You learn a lot of self-confidence, and it really builds you up. And I know it certainly did for me. And so that is a big part of both mentorship. I mean, a mentor that we had recently, she's now going to the Queen's Tea Party in a couple of weeks. She's working in London. We have another one who's working in London. And, anyway, all of the women that work at Casino are amazing. Some of them have flown off and doing other things, and some of them doing amazing things here. And so it's really important, both for young women and for older women like myself, that we continue to have these conversations and mentor and talk to each other and land the plane, as you rightly said. Absolutely.
I'd like to add to it because, and I'm going to talk about it from a different tilt, in that I'm also an entrepreneur. So I work at Bacardi, but I have various side projects. I run a social media website called the NAB app, and I also have a accessories and headband line called Isabella Artuso. My mother and I hand make these headbands that probably you always see me wearing. But let me tell you something. Every time I have an idea like that, like I want to create headbands, and there was a reason why I did that, but the next thing you need to think, how am I gonna sell these headbands? The only way that I was able to do that was because I had friends and connections and people that wanted to see me succeed, and Mia is one of them. So I told her about this idea. I created this headband, and she said, I will put it on my store floor. And only through that connection and that sponsorship that you gave me, I've now in not only her store, but I'm in Hamilton Princess, and I have opportunity to continue to grow this brand. Imagine if I had none of that, if I had nobody that was looking out for me or giving me opportunity. I was this random person saying I'm sewing in my room, making headbands. You don't get these opportunities without that network. So it's one of the things I always impart to young people whenever we have interns. I always say, work on growing your connections, because most opportunities are not about what you know, it's about who you know. But even more particular amongst women, we could be supporting, elevating, and amplifying each other. And to your point, when we're not even in that room, and that's how we can get those opportunities. So I really encourage people, if you've got support, go to Casino and buy products. Like Sophia's LinkedIn posts, and if you have a legal issue, give her a call. It's go to Island Trading, and then that all comes back to you. So it's super important.
So I got a lot of my colleagues here today. I'm wearing a headband tomorrow to work. Don't judge me. You know why I have that headband on. So we have 2 more questions, and then we're gonna open it up to the floor. So if you're sitting on something, just marinate on it, and we'll give you the opportunity to ask these lovely panelists right at the end. So I'll open this up again to all of you. How do you navigate societal expectations and stereotypes surrounding gender roles?
I'm so keen to jump in on this one because social media has us all shook, and it is, anyway, this concept of balance, this concept of soft life, I don't subscribe to it because each day looks different. And I think what we end up doing as women, we take ourselves far too seriously, and we set these expectations for ourselves, which are absolutely impossible to sustain and maintain. And for me, each day, I take each day as it comes, and with the long view in mind. But I have sort of faith that to the extent I'm doing my best each day, I'll end up where I need to be. It may not have been where I wanted to be, but it's where I absolutely need to be. And doing my best each day sometimes looks like sleeping in bed, staying in bed, watching movies, hanging out with friends. Some days it's doing 15 hours at the office. Some days it's listening to a female colleague just vent without any billable time. But the point I'm making, and then we get thrown these curveballs as well. Life just happens sometimes. And so I just think it's important not to get bogged down by societal expectations, what we see others doing, that spirit of competition. We're all at different places, running different races. Run your own race. And yeah, the whole thing about balance is we're setting ourselves up to fail. And balance is perspective. I always say I'm not on the pursuit of happiness, I'm on the pursuit of perspective.
I love that.
I would just add to that, very powerful comments, Sophia. Be vulnerable, right? Unless you have vulnerable conversations with people around you, at home, at work, unless you ask for help, unless you are willing to put yourself out there, right? I remember I was an analyst at Goldman Sachs in London, and I was about 8 months into this fairly intense position. And I remember going to my manager at the time, and I said, I'd like to be transferred. And he was like, wonderful. Which high value location would you like to move to? And I was like, actually, I'd like to move to New York, which is a very expensive location where they don't tend to move people who were at the bottom of the ladder like myself. And then I said, yes, my boyfriend, who's now my husband, is moving there. And he had enough confidence in me because I was honest about what I wanted. I shared with him what I wanted, why I wanted to do it. And he was also a mentor and knew me well, and my manager, that he made it happen. And I think it was because I was confident enough and because I was willing to be vulnerable enough, having a conversation that probably most junior people like that don't tend to go after. So I would just say have those vulnerable conversations, which don't always look like that. Sometimes they're like, look, I need this for my family and here's why. And I think people respond really well to that.
The question was, how do you overcome gender stereotypes?
Yes, and societal expectations surrounding gender roles and professional success.
Okay, my answer was not to that question. That was going on in my head. But I'll say what I'm going to say anyway, kind of. And this could go back to that, the delusion that I talked about, Miss Sasha, that's in there. But I often think about my story. I don't know if that's because I'm getting older, but just thinking about what's the story that's going to be said about me, and what do people say, what am I going to say about myself? And always, whenever I make decisions, I don't think it's based on a gender stereotype. I think it's more like, what's my narrative? What's the story that I want to be said about myself? What do I want to be telling myself? And I'm going to be that person, And so if that means, walking into a room where I'm not wanted, or going after a position that isn't traditionally for a woman or for a Black person, or person with my level of education, I just want to think that the person I am is going to walk in with confidence. I am going to say I tried, and if I fail, I'm going to learn from those mistakes and persevere. And I'm very cognizant of that story.
I say, don't subscribe to any of it. Throw on some red lipstick and just do your best.
Short and sweet.
Got it.
And Power Girl just called me. I just had to decline. Energy in the room. My final question is probably my favorite. I have a 3-year-old daughter, an almost 8-year-old daughter, and a 13-year-old daughter. And they're all 21 on various different days as well. So the final question is if you had the opportunity to provide words of guidance to yourself when you were a child, what would you say?
Listen to everything my mother told me to do. She's always right. For me, I mean, there's so many things, but I think the sort of standout for me has been trusting the process, pace, because it really is a marathon. There's some sprints in between, but it's a long game, and just enjoying the process, enjoying the journey. And it's easier said than done, but I think it's important we as women, especially, to the extent that we have very demanding careers, and that, ambition shows up in so many different ways. But to the extent that we're ambitious, sometimes it's difficult to get lost in the detail. And I think it's important for us not to take it all too seriously. Our health is important, our relationships are important. And I truly believe in those two things are aligned, everything else falls into place. So that's what I would have told my younger self. Yeah.
All right. Any young ladies in the room, your mom is 1,000%.
Always.
I'd be telling myself that your attention is precious, so be very careful who you give it to and what you give it to. I feel like time is obviously finite, and very often we're giving ourselves our attention to things that are not giving us joy. We're giving it to people that do not give us joy, and it is eating us. I did something a few years ago, I called it a friendship audit. I looked around at who I was surrounding myself with, and I literally thought, if this person is showing up at my house only talking about drama, about something that someone did, and we're not having constructive conversations about the empire you're building, I don't want to have that conversation. I don't need you in my life. It just, yeah, you guys.
I don't know if I did, but.
But it's super important in this time of like TikTok and social media. I'm seeing even my own daughter. We're giving our attention to things that are not elevating us. They're not promoting us in any way. They're not helping us to grow in any way. And so that would be something I would definitely be telling myself. Careful who you give your attention and your time to, because you can't get that time back.
I don't want to be last, so I'll go next. I would tell myself when I was a child that do the self-exploration. Spend the time to understand, and this should be at all stages of our lives, what you like and what you're good at. Everything in a job can be learned. So I spent too much time personally trying to fit myself into a template that wasn't right for me. And I'm talking about the banking period of my life. And looking back, it's not that it was a waste of time because I've gained so much from it, but it wasn't me and it wasn't what I liked. And I wasn't amazing at it because eventually you're gonna tap out of that because it's not what you're really interested in. So I would say do that self-exploration now because you can be successful at whatever it is. So understand what you're good at and what you like and go for that. The other second thing I would say is I should have told myself as a child that I looked amazing in patterns and I should wear them every day.
And last but not least.
I still feel like the little girl's still with me. I don't know if you guys feel that way. So sometimes when I'm doing these big girl decisions, I think about like my younger self and I think, yes, like this is awesome. We're doing this together. And also having a son, which is amazing. And I'm just imparting a lot of my knowledge, lifetime knowledge onto him. But if I could say anything, I just think I feel like since being a little girl, I've really followed my heartbeat. I've really followed my path. I've never been afraid to be weird or different or stand in front of people and sing in a room. I was afraid to come here tonight. I was very nervous. But I just want to say it's okay to be weird, and it's okay to be different, and everybody is. And you are going to live a wildly adventurous, wonderful life. And thank you all for sharing this with us tonight.
We at Clarien want to thank Bacardi for this partnership. I could say my wife works at Bacardi, I work at Clarien. That both companies really want to do as much as they can to promote, to inspire, to have events like this, to have these sorts of discussions, and to really make a difference in our communities. So this is something that we're really passionate about, and we're really glad that we were able to come together. There were a lot of hands that made this event possible, so we want to thank all of you for that. We want to thank all of you here in the audience for showing up, not just the women, but also the men as well, for being a part of breaking barriers. And the take home is that this isn't just a discussion, this is a movement, and get out of our way, because we're going to continue to break these barriers. And finally, we want to thank these wonderful women, give them a round of applause, who shared their life and experiences. And you get a car, 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 and some flowers.